the church. If you don't, I think there's a book on it, if not a couple. And you've told the story on EWTN. Rome Sweet Home is the book that has changed so many lives, including my own, and your stories on EWTN. But I always ask the guests to at least give a little 5-minute summary of why the Lord opened your heart to the Catholic Church for those that might not know or not remember all the details.
Yeah.
All right.
Which first?
You'd have to go first since your story's first.
Okay, I'll try to do it in 2.5 minutes to leave the second half of that 5-minute slot for her. I was raised in a nominal Protestant family. We didn't go to church all the time, and it didn't make much of a difference. I got into a lot of trouble as a juvenile delinquent at the age of 13, 14, and then I got saved through young life. I remember hearing the gospel in a way that just touched my life at precisely the time I needed my life to be changed, and changed by God alone. And the formation that I got for the rest of my years in high school was really steeped in Scripture, but it was also in the Reformed evangelical tradition of Calvinism. And so I became not just your average Calvinist, but a very staunch and vibrant one. So I went off to college, studying theology, philosophy, as well as economics, studying Greek, falling in love with the most beautiful gal on campus. We teamed up together in Young Life for the last 2 years of our 4-year stint there. And after we both graduated in '79, we got married and got back from our honeymoon, packed up, and moved off to Boston to study at Gordon Conwell. And just through a number of providential circumstances, things happened in the 3-year program there. I think the first step was something that Kimberly might relate a little bit more about, but discovering that the Catholic Church had it right on contraception. I didn't see that one coming, and she shared that with me, and I had to admit in all sincerity that the Catholic Church was right, and so was the Bible, and so was historic Protestantism. But still, I wasn't really willing to give the Catholic Church anything more than just credit for getting one thing right, But it was my 3rd and final year that I began to read the Fathers much more in depth. And I think it was largely for practical reasons, because I was looking for sermon material. I was going to, after graduation came ordination, and I couldn't just rob from my favorite preachers because they were on TV or radio, they were published, and so everybody would recognize the sources. So I just began to comb these pages of the Sunday sermons of the early Fathers, and I began to realize they read the Bible differently than I did. They read the Old and the New together, which is what I strove to do, but they did it in a way that was just much more penetrating. And so after a few months of this, I had graduated, began to preach, and I began to really employ this notion of reading the Old and New together, typology as it was known, and all of a sudden everything started coming up Catholic, the Eucharist especially, but baptism as well, and what it meant to be born again. And the whole Gospel of John was most especially sort of the place where I began to realize, boy, the early church fathers have it here. And in John 6 with the Bread of Life Discourse, the Eucharist, eat my flesh, drink my blood, within less than 2 years, I had studied and prayed myself into a crisis of faith, which required me to kind of step away from the pastorate, step out of the role I had as a professor at seminary, and then go in search of a church that fit the job description that I found in the whole Bible, not just the New Testament, not just with proof text, but reading the New and the Old contextually. And it was in the mid-'80s, we moved to Milwaukee so I could begin studying for a doctorate at Marquette, thinking I'm going to need at least 5 years to make this conversion look intellectually respectable. And then I went to Mass secretly. And then a second day, a third day, after 2 weeks or so of attending daily Mass, I just felt my heart transformed, my mind illuminated, and the Scriptures just really coming true in a way I never imagined before. And so when I broke it to Kimberly, after having pledged to her I would wait 5 years, here I was asking her to pray about allowing me to do it after 1 year, and barely one, if even that. And she asked me why, and I just blurted it out, because delaying obedience to what I know is true is feeling more like disobedience every day. And I really hadn't plotted that response. But when I heard myself say it, I realized that was really the bottom line. That was the truth of the matter, the heart of the matter. And gracious woman that she was, she came back a few hours later and said, I prayed, I'll release you. What are we talking about here? Well, what we were talking about was becoming Catholic at the Easter Vigil of 1986, which was 4 years before I told her I would. And I think in God's wonderful and humorous providence, 4 years before she did. And that was a tumultuous period for the both of us.
All right.
Well, my background is different.